6 years of loyalty. Gone in 60 seconds. I didn't lose my promotion. It was stolen, right in front of everyone. My name's Ryan Hawley, and for 6 years, I gave everything I had to a company called Bennett Dynamics. Early mornings, late nights, missed birthdays, and countless weekends at my desk. Not because anyone forced me, but because I believed that hard work meant something. Every project I led was a success. My team respected me. Clients trusted me. I thought that would be enough. I thought loyalty still mattered. That morning, I walked into the office feeling proud. I was sure this was it, the day I'd finally be named Director of Operations. My colleagues smiled as I passed by. Some whispered congratulations. One of them even said, "You've earned it, Ryan." And you know what? For the first time, I believed them. The company-wide meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. Everyone gathered in the conference hall, about 100 people. All buzzing with energy. At the front of the room stood Charles Bennett, our CEO, a tall man with silver hair and a voice that could silence a crowd. He smiled that polished corporate smile, the kind that hides more than it shows. Beside him stood his son, Liam Bennett, young, confident, and barely out of business school. The kind of guy who wore expensive suits but didn't know what pressure felt like. Charles cleared his throat. "Today," he began, "we recognize a new era of leadership at Bennett Dynamics. The position of Director of Operations will be critical for our company's future." My heart was racing. My colleagues looked at me. I felt their hands patting my shoulder. Then came the words I'll never forget. "Please welcome our new Director of Operations, Liam Bennett." The room froze. No one clapped, not right away. You could feel the confusion hanging in the air like heavy fog. Then, slowly, people started to applaud. The kind of applause that's forced, unsure. I joined in too, clapping just enough to seem polite, just enough to hide the storm inside me. Liam grinned, shaking hands like he'd just won something he worked for. "Thank you, Dad," he said. "I'll make you proud." "Dad, not sir, not Mr. Bennett, just Dad." I remember staring at that moment, realizing something ugly. In business, I whispered to myself, fairness is optional. When the meeting ended, people avoided my eyes. A few mumbled awkward sympathies. My best friend from the office, Mark, just put a hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "I'm sorry, man. You deserved it." But what do you say to that? What do you say when the dream you've chased for years is handed to someone who never even ran the race? That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at nothing. My wife, Maya, brought me a cup of coffee, her eyes full of concern. "Talk to me, Ryan," she said softly. I told her everything, how I'd been preparing for months, how even the board seemed to support me, and how it all vanished in one moment of favoritism. She reached across the table and held my hand. "You've worked too hard to throw it away in anger. Play the long game," she said. People like that always expose themselves. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to let go of the bitterness crawling inside me. But something inside me had shifted. I didn't want revenge, I told her. I just wanted to understand why hard work never seems to be enough. She smiled faintly, trying to reassure me. "Because the world isn't fair," she whispered. "But that doesn't mean you stop being who you are." I nodded, but my mind wasn't calm. I kept replaying the scene, the smirk on Liam's face, the hollow applause, the sting of betrayal disguised as celebration. That night, as the city lights flickered outside my window, I made a silent promise to myself. I'll stay. I'll work. I'll watch. But I won't forget. Little did I know, that was the moment everything truly began. Because sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you is exactly what you need to wake up. I thought losing that promotion was the worst thing that could happen. I say now, years later, I was wrong. Cue the faint sound of distant thunder, a storm building, As the screen fades to black, they say power reveals who we really are. Liam proved that fast. It had been only 3 weeks since the promotion, the one I was supposed to get. 3 weeks since I clapped for a man who didn't deserve it. But in those 3 weeks, everything changed. The office that once felt alive now felt uneasy. The laughter, the teamwork, the spark, all gone. It was as if someone had dimmed the lights on purpose. When Liam Bennett became director of operations, he didn't waste time making his mark. New policies every other day. Random firings that made no sense. The kind of arrogance that didn't just walk into a room, it took it over. He replaced senior managers with his college buddies, people who knew nothing about our business but everything about flattery. Meetings became performances, not discussions. Liam loved hearing himself talk. And when I spoke up, he'd interrupt, joke about my old school thinking, then repeat my idea 5 minutes later as if it were his own. It wasn't leadership, I say quietly now. It was ego in a suit. Every time he walked past me, he wore that same smug smile, like he was reminding me who sat in the bigger chair. But the higher he climbed, the faster things began to crack. Projects started falling behind schedule. Clients complained about missed deadlines. Morale dropped lower every week. People whispered in break rooms, wondering how long before the company started to sink. Even the most loyal employees began looking for new jobs. And through it all, Liam acted like nothing was wrong. He hosted team parties, posted fake motivational quotes on the company intranet, and took credit for work that wasn't even his. It was painful to watch. But something inside me shifted. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was alert. Then one day, while reviewing a project file, I noticed something odd, a double entry in the expense sheet. A small discrepancy, maybe a few $1,000s, but enough to make me pause. A week later, I found another one. Then another. At first, I thought it was carelessness. But carelessness doesn't repeat itself in patterns. Lies do. I started digging deeper, quietly, carefully. And the more I looked, the more things didn't add up. I didn't confront him. Not yet. You don't go to war without a plan. And this wasn't a battle I could win by shouting in a meeting. I had to play it the way he did, quietly, strategically. So I observed. I listened. I watched who he met after hours, what projects he prioritized, which vendors got suspiciously large payments. Each discovery was like a piece of a puzzle, one that painted a picture of greed, carelessness, and entitlement, but I kept my face neutral. Every time he insulted me in front of others, I forced a polite smile. Every time he took credit for my work, I said nothing, because I knew. Every word he said was building the case against him. One evening, after a tense meeting where Liam mocked my old-fashioned values, someone tapped my shoulder as the room cleared. It was Angela Brooks, one of the oldest board members. A woman who'd seen more boardroom wars than anyone else in the building. She looked at me with those calm, sharp eyes. "Keep your head down for now," she said softly. "Storms always reveal who can swim." I remember freezing for a second. It wasn't just advice, it was a message. She knew something. And for the first time since losing my promotion, I felt not angry, but ready. That one line echoed in my mind all night. Storms always reveal who can swim. Maybe this storm, this chaos Liam was creating, could finally reveal the truth. The next morning, I walked into the office with a different mindset. I wasn't the betrayed employee anymore. I was the quiet observer. The one who would remember every word, every mistake, every number that didn't add up. Liam might have stolen my title, but he'd handed me something far more powerful: motivation. I knew I had to be patient. I knew the fall would come. The question was just when, and that's when I realized maybe this storm could work in my favor. The narration fades out over the hum of office noise, papers shuffling, phones ringing, footsteps echoing, a subtle build of tension in the background. like a storm gathering in the distance. Because what Liam didn't know was that every crown built on lies eventually cracks. You can't hide corruption forever, not when the truth has witnesses. By the time the next quarter rolled around, I had stopped trying to move on. Because deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Liam wasn't just careless, he was covering something. And I could feel it every time a new invoice crossed my desk. Every time a client questioned a payment I'd never approved. So I did what I had to do. I started watching, listening, documenting. And the more I looked, the uglier it got. Most nights, I stayed late in the office, long after everyone else had gone home. The cleaning crew knew me by name. They'd nod as they passed, the hum of the vacuum cleaner masking the quiet clicking of my keyboard. On the surface, it looked like I was catching up on reports. But beneath that calm, I was digging emails, budget drafts, payment authorizations. And that's when I saw them. A series of consulting payments made to shell companies that didn't exist. Invoices with no address, no contact, no trail. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was some vendor mix-up, but then I saw Liam's signature on every single one. Every discovery felt like reopening a wound, I say softly. But it also reignited something inside me, purpose. I started building a digital folder. I named it Truth, because that's what it was. Each night, a new piece of evidence went in. A fake invoice here, a falsified email there, a report he'd modified after approval. It became my secret mission. Quiet, methodical, unstoppable. It was strange. The same man who humiliated me had no idea I was already dismantling his empire from the shadows. I wasn't just betrayed anymore. I was awake. At home, Maya started noticing the change. One evening, she found me sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, eyes locked on spreadsheets. "You're different lately," she said softly. "You hardly sleep." I looked up, tired but focused. "No," I said. "I'm finally awake." There was silence between us, the kind that holds both fear and understanding. She didn't ask more questions. She knew, a week later, Liam crossed a line I didn't expect. During a project review meeting, one attended by half the department, he suddenly turned to me. Voice sharp, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Ryan," he snapped. "Can you explain why the numbers in the Orion file are wrong? Or is this another example of your outdated management style slowing us down?" The room went silent. Everyone's eyes turned toward me. He was lying. The report wasn't wrong. He had altered the data himself to make me look incompetent. I felt the heat rise in my chest, the sting of humiliation burning behind my calm face. But I didn't fight back. Not there. Not then. Sometimes silence is the loudest threat. I whispered. So I just looked at him, steady, unreadable, and said, "I'll check on it." That silence hit harder than any argument could. And I saw it, just for a second, the flicker of discomfort in his eyes. He knew I wasn't done. Later that week, after another tense meeting, I was gathering my notes when Angela Brooks, the board member who had once warned me to stay quiet, approached me again. Her tone was low, cautious. "The board's been asking questions," she said quietly. "We've noticed things off." She glanced around the hallway before adding, "If you have something to show us, make sure it's airtight." I froze for a moment, processing her words. Airtight. She knew something was coming. And suddenly, all those sleepless nights made sense. All that anger I'd buried had turned into something useful, a weapon of truth. That night, I narrate, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like the storm she warned me about, and I was ready to strike. Back at my desk, I opened the folder again, the one labeled Truth. I scrolled through the files, emails, approvals, receipts, every lie Liam had signed his name to. The screen's glow lit up my face in the dark office. For the first time in months, I felt calm. Not angry, not broken, calm. He took my title, I say, the tone cold, steady. But now I was taking his empire. The faint sound of a clock ticking echoes as the camera fades to black, leaving behind only the whisper of a brewing storm. Revenge doesn't always start with rage. Sometimes it starts with restraint. I had all the proof I needed. Every document, every email, every number that didn't make sense. It was all sitting neatly in my folder labeled Truth, but I wasn't ready to show my hand. Not yet, because revenge, the real kind, isn't loud. It's patient. It's quiet. It waits until the other side thinks they've won. And then it whispers, checkmate. So I played the part. The loyal employee. The dependable manager. The one who smiled in meetings and kept his tone polite, even when Liam spoke to me like I was beneath him. Behind that calm exterior, I began my silent campaign. I reached out to the compliance team, not with accusations, but with questions. Small, harmless ones that sounded routine. Could you double-check the consultant payments for Q2? I think there's a data discrepancy. I never mentioned Liam's name. I didn't have to. Soon, whispers began to move through the hallways. Quiet, cautious whispers about an internal audit. No one knew who started it. And that was the beauty of it. Meanwhile, I continued my work as if nothing had changed. The key to winning a silent war is making sure your opponent never realizes they're losing. It didn't take long for Liam to notice. He started showing up at my office unexpectedly, fake smile, nervous eyes. At first, it was small talk. Hey Ryan, I just wanted to check how things are going. Then the tone shifted. You know, I've been hearing rumors. People saying there's some kind of audit happening. That could hurt both of us, right? I looked at him, pretending to be confused. Audit? Oh, I hadn't heard. His smile tightened. You don't want to make enemies here, Ryan, he said, voice low. It's bad for your career. I let a faint smile cross my face. Calm, steady, deliberate. You already did. For a moment, his mask slipped. I saw the panic flash in his eyes. That was the first time I knew. The tide was turning. Behind the scenes, Angela Brooks became my quiet ally. We met after hours in her office, blinds drawn, voices low. We went through every file I'd collected. Every forged signature, every payment trail, every fake consultant name. She looked at me with a mixture of respect and concern. You've done your homework, she said. But we can't rush this. When this goes to the board, it has to be bulletproof. I nodded. It's not just evidence anymore, I said. Each file, each email. It's closure. We built the final report together, layer by layer, until it was undeniable. Liam had created an entire web of corruption, and he'd left his fingerprints on every strand. Days passed in tense silence. The rumors about the audit grew louder. Employees whispered in elevators, in break rooms, in parking lots. Liam pretended everything was fine, but his temper gave him away. He started snapping at staff, canceling meetings, even blaming others for his mistakes. The calm, confident director everyone once saw was unraveling. Meanwhile, his father, Charles Bennett, the CEO, began to sense something was wrong. But he couldn't see the full picture. He only saw chaos and confusion. And like any father desperate to protect his son, he believed Liam's excuses until the board called for an emergency meeting. That was the moment I knew the end was near. The night before the meeting, I stayed late one last time. The office was empty, just the soft hum of the lights and the quiet tapping of my keyboard. I reviewed the report once more, ensuring every fact was supported, every document verified. There could be no doubt, no weakness. As I looked at the thick file sitting on my desk, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Revenge, I whispered, isn't about hurting someone. It's about restoring balance. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the city lights outside the window. Somewhere out there, Liam was probably pacing his living room, wondering what was coming. He didn't know it yet, but the war he thought he won was already over. The next morning, an email went out. Subject: emergency board meeting, attendance required. I saw Liam's face when he read it. His hand froze mid-air, eyes wide. He looked over at me, and for the first time, he didn't smirk. He knew. The funny thing about silence, I narrate, is that people mistake it for weakness. But silence is where strategy lives. I shut down my computer, picked up the folder, and walked out of my office. Tomorrow, I thought, the truth finally speaks. He walked into that room thinking he owned it. He left realizing he never did. The morning of the board meeting felt strangely calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. The air in the building was heavy, not loud, not chaotic, just tense. Everyone knew something big was coming. They just didn't know what. But I did. I'd been waiting for this day. Not out of anger anymore, but for justice, quiet, steady justice that doesn't need to shout to be heard. The boardroom looked exactly the same as it always did. Long mahogany table, glass walls, sunlight spilling in from the windows overlooking the city. But today, that room wasn't just a conference space. It was an arena. Liam Bennett walked in first. Perfect suit. Perfect hair. That same arrogant smirk. He greeted everyone like a celebrity shaking hands at a red carpet. To him, this was just another meeting. Another chance to flaunt his father's power. Then Charles Bennett, the CEO, entered, tall, composed, confident. You could feel the air shift when he walked in. To him, this was business as usual, but to me, this was the day everything changed. Angela Brooks was already there, quiet but focused, a stack of papers in front of her. When she met my eyes, she gave the smallest nod, calm, deliberate. It was time. Charles began with his usual tone. Let's review quarterly performance, he said, glancing around. There's been some noise lately about accounting inconsistencies. Let's clear that up today. Liam leaned back in his chair, pretending to look relaxed. He even chuckled under his breath. Oh, I'm sure it's nothing serious, he said. Just miscommunication between departments. That's when Angela spoke. Her voice was steady, but her words cut through the room like glass. Actually, it's not miscommunication, she said. It's fraud. The word hung in the air. You could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Liam shifted in his seat. The smirk fading just slightly. Angela placed the folder on the table, my folder, and slid it toward Charles. This is a detailed report of falsified payments, fake consultants, and forged approvals. All signed under your son's name. Every eye in the room turned to Liam. For a moment, he tried to laugh. That's ridiculous, he said, voice cracking slightly. You can't be serious. But Angela kept going, calm and relentless. Each document has been verified by compliance. Every number cross-checked. This is not a misunderstanding. Then she turned to me. Ryan Hawley assisted in gathering the evidence. Liam's head snapped toward me, eyes cold, voice sharp. You think you can set me up? I didn't flinch. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up. I just kept the receipts. Charles's face hardened. He flipped through the report, page by page, and with each one, the truth carved deeper into him. Liam kept talking, excuses, denials, half-lies. But the more he spoke, the less anyone believed him. Finally, one of the board members interrupted. Enough. The evidence is clear. We've been misled, and this company's reputation is at risk. That silence that followed was heavier than any word could be. In that silence, I narrate, justice finally took a breath. Charles looked at his son, the realization slowly washing over him that the empire he built, the family name he protected, had been destroyed from the inside by the very person he trusted most. The proud father, the powerful CEO, sat there speechless. He wasn't angry at me. Not anymore. He was angry at himself, because pride blinds you. And when it does, truth doesn't knock, it breaks. The door opened. The vote was quick. Unanimous. Liam was suspended pending a full investigation. His access revoked, his title stripped. He stood up, furious, red-faced, but no one stopped him. Cameras were waiting outside, flashes going off as the door swung open. He stormed out without looking back. Charles followed slowly, head down, every step heavier than the last. The room stayed silent. And me? I stayed seated, watching, listening, breathing. I didn't need to gloat, I said quietly. The truth did it for me. When the meeting finally ended, Angela walked past me and placed a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Ryan, she said softly. Justice takes time, but it always finds its way. I nodded, staring out at the skyline through the glass wall. The sun was setting, painting the city gold. For the first time in years, the office felt quiet, peaceful. They thought I wanted revenge, I say in my closing voiceover. But I just wanted balance. And today, balance was restored. The faint sound of wind echoes as the scene fades to black. He walked into that room, thinking he owned it, I whisper. He left realizing he never did. Karma doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it whispers through the walls. A few days after that board meeting, the silence inside Bennett Dynamics felt different. It wasn't tense anymore. It was cleansing. Like the air after a storm, heavy with truth but ready for something new. Emails went out that morning. Short, formal, and predictable. Charles Bennett was stepping down for personal reasons. Liam Bennett had officially resigned, pending a full investigation. No one was surprised. Not really. But you could feel the collective exhale, the sound of people realizing that justice, after all this time, had finally spoken. The office was unusually quiet. People whispered in corners, glancing at each other with cautious relief. For months, fear had ruled this place. Fear of speaking up, fear of losing jobs, fear of being next. Now, that fear was gone. I sat at my desk, watching the email notification flash across my screen. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I just leaned back and breathed. It was over, I narrate. Not with fireworks, not with cheers, but with peace. The same board that once overlooked me now wanted to meet privately. I was invited to the top floor, the same boardroom where I had once sat, silent and powerless. This time, it was different. Angela Brooks was the first to speak. Ryan, she said, we've seen how you've handled yourself through all of this, with patience, grace, and professionalism. We need leadership like that now. The words took a moment to sink in. Then she said the one sentence that changed everything. The board has voted to appoint you as acting director of operations. I didn't speak right away. I just sat there, letting the moment breathe. Because for 6 long years, I'd dreamed of this title, but never like this. I didn't just want to win, I said softly. I wanted to prove that integrity still mattered. When I finally stood up to address them, my voice was calm, grounded. Thank you. I'll do everything I can to rebuild the trust that was lost. We build trust not through power, but through patience. It wasn't a speech. It was a promise. The days that followed were quieter, but filled with purpose. The same employees who once walked with their heads down now began smiling again. The meetings were no longer about control. They were about collaboration. I made it my mission to restore what Liam had destroyed: fairness, transparency, and respect. I promoted the people who worked hard but never got noticed. I reopened the internship program that had been cut. I made sure every voice in the room mattered, not just the loudest one. Slowly, the culture began to change. One afternoon, as I was leaving my office, I overheard 2 employees talking by the elevator. It finally feels good to work here again. One of them said that I didn't interrupt. I just smiled to myself. That was the moment I realized this was the real victory. There were no headlines, no applause, no public recognition. But I didn't need any of that. Sometimes, justice doesn't need to make noise, I narrate. It just needs to happen. I thought about Liam sometimes, where he might be, what he might be doing now. I didn't feel hate anymore. Just a quiet understanding that some lessons come the hard way. As for Charles, he faded from the company's story like a shadow at sunset. A man who learned too late that pride can destroy everything it touches. And me? I stayed. Not to prove a point, but to protect what I helped rebuild. Karma doesn't always shout, I say softly in the closing voiceover. Sometimes it just whispers. Through the walls you once tried to break. The camera, in the listener's imagination, pans over the office. Brighter now. Filled with laughter and teamwork, I stand by the window, watching the city lights flicker below. They took my promotion once, I say. But in doing so, they gave me something greater, purpose. Because sometimes when life breaks you, it's just teaching you how to rebuild stronger. A soft pause. Justice doesn't always roar, I finish. Sometimes it simply stands quietly and smiles. Revenge gave me justice, but forgiveness gave me peace. It had been 6 months since that storm, the storm that changed everything. 6 months since lies were exposed. Power shifted, and silence finally spoke louder than arrogance ever could. Now, when I walk through these halls, the same halls where I once felt invisible, everything feels different. The walls aren't filled with whispers anymore. The air doesn't feel heavy. It feels calm, honest, real. I walk past the conference room, the same one where I once clapped for a man who stole my promotion. Back then, I remember how humiliation burned in my chest. But today, that room feels smaller, not because it changed, but because I did. The same coworkers who once looked at me with pity now greet me with respect. Not fear, not formality. Respect. It's strange how life works. The places that once reminded you of pain can someday remind you of strength. I stopped for a moment, looking through the glass wall into that room, remembering that meeting. The applause, the smirk on Liam's face. Betrayal broke me, I narrate quietly. But it also built me. Because the truth is, if that day hadn't happened, I would have never learned what I was capable of. As I turn the corner, I see Angela Brooks walking toward me, the same calm, confident stride she's always had. She smiles, that knowing smile of someone who's seen decades of boardroom battles and still believes in integrity. You played the long game, Ryan, she says. And you won. I smile faintly, shaking my head. No, I reply. I just stopped playing theirs. She laughs softly. That's exactly why you won. Her words linger, not as praise, but as truth. The long game wasn't about revenge. It was about patience. It was about letting character speak louder than anger. Later that day, I sit by the large window in my office now, watching the city move beneath me. The skyline glows gold under the setting sun. And for a moment, I remember the man I was before all of this. The man who thought loyalty alone was enough. The man who believed fairness always wins. The man who didn't realize that sometimes you have to walk through betrayal to understand your own strength. Revenge gave me justice, I say softly. But forgiveness gave me peace. Because the truth is, revenge might give you satisfaction for a moment, but forgiveness gives you freedom for a lifetime. I don't hate Liam anymore. I don't even think about him with anger. He taught me something no textbook or training ever could, that power without integrity always collapses. And that respect can't be inherited. It has to be earned. That evening as I leave the building, I pass by the main entrance, the same one I used to walk through every morning. rehearsing speeches in my head, dreaming about that promotion. I pause there for a moment. The lobby is quiet. The same logo shines above the doors, but it feels like a different company now, a better one. I run my fingers across the railing, the memories flashing like an old film reel, the humiliation, the doubt, the quiet nights of planning, the first spark of justice, and then the peace that followed. Sometimes I narrate softly. Losing what you wanted most shows you what you truly deserve. If I had gotten that promotion the easy way, without the pain, without the betrayal, I might have turned into someone like Liam, but fate had other plans. It broke me first, only to rebuild me stronger. The camera, in the listener's imagination, drifts upward, from the office floor to the glowing skyline outside, where the city hums quietly below. They stole my title, I say, my voice calm, assured. But they handed me something far greater: truth, justice, and peace of mind. A pause. Soft piano fades in the background. Because in the end, I whisper, storms don't destroy you. They shape you. They strip away everything false, until only what's real remains. The shot fades to black, only the faint echo of my final words left behind. Revenge gave me justice, but forgiveness gave me peace. Every storm leaves a lesson behind, and every ending writes a new beginning. If this story moved you, don't just click away, join our community of storytellers. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next chapter, another story of betrayal, revenge, and justice that reminds us the truth always finds its way. And if this story made you think, made you feel, or made you reflect, drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done. Until next time, remember, storms don't break you. They reveal who you truly are.